Welcome to the hidden side of business success, where people who are thriving loud tell their deepest and darkest secrets. Happy Halloween, my crazy, scary Thrive Loud listeners. Don't let the ghosts, goblins, witches, and vampires haunt you this Halloween. Instead, listen to the Thrive Loud podcast and let Lou Diamond scare you himself with his talk about work, business, and future success. Oh yeah, that's so much scarier than the thought of a monster living under your bed. But it's okay, because it's a good kind of scary, I think. Anyways, you guys make sure to have a safe yet spooky Halloween, and as you keep listening, try not to be too frightened.
Get ready to thrive loud with Lou Diamond.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Thrive Loud with Lou Diamond, connecting you to the most inspiring and amazing people that are thriving each and every day. I'm your host, Lou Diamond. Today on Thrive Loud, we have a woman that has been featured by the New York Times, CNN, BBC, and was on the cover of People magazine. She works with animals all over the world who are sick, injured, have a terminal illness, or suffer from age-related issues or trauma due to previous abuse. On the flip side, she has an energy, hilarity, and awesomeness that makes her the most fun person to hang out with at any time, at any room, in any moment. Here to spread her message about the importance of preventative healthcare in between her Korean massage spa appointments, Thrive Loud listeners, Rachel Augusta. Rachel, how are you today?
I'm so good. How are you, Lou? I had my hand over my mouth trying not to laugh out loud when you said that.
So the Thrive Loud listeners need to know that I recently met Rachel in Southern California in September of 2019. And she is, for lack of a better word, quite energetic and quite open very quickly. And basically had shared that she had a personal moment with a masseuse within 2 minutes of our initial conversation. And it was at that point, before I learned anything else about her, I said, yeah, she's got to come on Thrive Loud. I don't even know what she does. But then I learned what she did, as you heard in the opening, and she's got a great story. So if you could, Rachel, can you share with the Thrive Loud listeners a little bit of how this became your passion and your focus? Because I think I want to hear a little bit of the backstory, not like from the womb, but like from like a certain point in time that's a logical part to pick up. How about that?
Totally. Yeah. So I started working with animals. People always think that, they're like, oh, you must have known as a little child that you wanted to work with animals. And that's not at all my case. What happened was my soul companion, a Norwegian forest cat of mine, got really super sick. And she was diagnosed with a terminal illness. She was given a couple of weeks to live. And the veterinarian essentially had no bedside manners and said, well, she's old, she's going to die. And even though she was 17 and she was an older cat, the veterinarian's presentation of what was laying before me threw me into action. And I knew that if anybody was going to be able to help Holly, my cat, it was going to have to be me. And so I knew I didn't have time to go to school to be a veterinarian. But pretty much the very next day, an acquaintance of mine asked me if I had heard of this school that's based in Colorado that was going to be teaching classes at the U of M, the University of Minnesota, and where it's teaching the brain and the body how to work with one another to build up an immune system rather than those two things not working together. And so I jumped into the courses and I started applying everything I was learning from this holistic animal approach to my companion, my soul companion, and immediately saw shifts and changes. In fact, she was given a couple of weeks to live. She lived an additional 3 years.
Oh my goodness. Wow.
Yeah, by building up her immune system. And because I'm an animal rights activist, I'm connected to a ton of people who have animals. So all of a sudden, people are knocking on my door and they're like, here's my cat, here's my bunny, here's a pig we just rescued, here's a cow, here's a horse, like, here's our dog. And I literally had lines of people I know out the door bringing animals to me that needed love and attention, maybe dogs that were rescued from dog fighting rings and stuff.
Right.
And, one day I was like, I can't do this. I'm going to be homeless. All I'm doing is helping all these animals. And then I was like, wait, maybe this is my job. Maybe I should start charging people. And that's how I got into the business.
So Rachel, this makes perfect sense. I mean, let's talk about this. You live in Minnesota. I live in the Northeast, and we both got a chance to go to Southern California, where this is all they do every day is literally live in amazing weather. And more notably, they're a much more holistic way of eating, living, breathing is a focus there. It's core, and it's spread everywhere, and everyone's into this. And obviously it makes perfect sense that this should be the way animals are treated as well. Why do you think it's taken so long for this mentality to be paired over and carried over to our best friends?
Well, I think so there's a huge gap in our medical system. And I believe that gap is there for both humans and non-humans, two-leggeds and four-leggeds, is because of two main groups of people, to be honest. I believe it's Christianity and atheists.
Okay.
And when I say that,
dive deeper here. I want to know where you're going. Yes.
Yeah. So, I mean, a lot of people ask me, and they're being very serious. Like, when I come into a house and I work with their animal, they will ask me if it's witchcraft, and they're not being facetious. They're not joking. They're not trying to be mean. Like, they really do wonder if what I'm doing is witchcraft. And I have a lot of people say, well, I want you to know I don't believe in what you do. And it's like, you don't believe in the physiological relaxation response. You don't believe in building up somebody's immune system through oxygenating the blood and regulating the hormones. And, and I've had this conversation, and a lot of times people are like, well, I can't see, because I'm an energy practitioner. I can't see what you're doing. And, and the analogy I like to use is, you have a TV and you have a remote control, and you turn one on, you turn on your television with remote control, but it's not connected. Like, is that witchcraft? And, but 100 years ago, it probably would have been looked at as maybe witchcraft, and it would have been really confusing. And it's the same thing with this. It's the same thing with holistic healthcare. So I believe that Christianity and atheism has created this huge gap in our medical field that's caused a lot of desperation with really sick people. Most autoimmune diseases, Western medicine does not know what to do. So with Christianity, you have a group of people that say there's one person who could have cured your leprosy. There's one person who could have solved this horrible situation with your health, but he's dead. And you're going to have to get on your knees and beg and pray that he helps you.
I'm sorry. That was,
right? But
that
it's
was
true.
Spectacular. I hear you. And I'm going to lead into this part of the question. You might be more of an expert in this area than most, because as I learned,
my dad is a pastor.
Yes. And you gave me a term. What did you call yourself? You called yourself a PK?
I'm a PK, a preacher's kid.
Preacher's kid. So you obviously have a very in-depth expertise from growing up in that environment to understand that thought process.
Right.
I guess I'm going to ask the question, and I'm not going to use the R word here, and referring to possibly going in the other direction. But what was the point in time that you saw that there was another way to do something? Was this a young thing that you saw, something that as you got older? When did you start to realize, well, maybe this is the problem, or the lack of openness might be a direction that you should pursue, because there are other ways to do things?
Desperation.
Okay.
It came through desperation, because what happened was when the veterinarian said she's old, she's going to die, there's nothing more that can be done. A truer statement would have been, there's nothing more I can do. And that's something that I really like to talk to a lot of people about. And, when I have so many clients, I get on the call, I get on phone calls with people that are like, my doctor said, my vet said, there's nothing more that can be done. And I have to remind them, no, there's nothing more that that person could do for you. But that doesn't mean there's nothing more that can be done. And that comes, for me, it came out of desperation. And I see so many sick people who are so desperate for an answer. And, and I want to clarify, my dad is a retired pastor. I love him. But when I first got into this work, we were sitting and having lunch, and he said, Rachel, what am I supposed to tell my friends?
Wow.
And I was like, Dad, I'm not a stripper. I work with animals. And even if I was a stripper, that's okay. That's fine. But he was so afraid that people would ask him what his daughter does. And he'd be like, I don't know. It's witchcraft. And it's like, no, I work with animals. And, so you have that group, but then you have a group of atheists, who, and my brother is an atheist, when I first started doing this work, he came to my house one day and he was like, do you believe in Jesus? And it was this very we're Swedish. My grandparents are Swedish. So questions like that are very triggered. Like there's going to be a fight, And I was like, well, I'm really superstitious and I'm afraid to answer this question because I don't know that I believe in Jesus, but I don't really understand what's going on either. All I know is that my cat was given 2 weeks to live and now she's alive 3 years later, and I'm helping a lot of animals that were given death sentences. And what his question drove me into was wanting to prove my little brother wrong. And I started to really research the science behind energy medicine and just holistic healthcare. And what I find is that it's two people will debate me on this, and it's Christians or atheists, because they believe that energy work or holistic healthcare in general is woo-woo and that it's based in spirituality.
So now I want to ask this question. Convincing people that it's not woo-woo or witchcraft is one challenge. And that to me seems like that is becoming, and maybe it's where you are in the country or where you're located in the world, that it seems to be people will be more open as they start to realize, and you have more successes and you've been having those things and those stories are there, and people look for those, like you say, out of desperation or start to believe different things. I want to talk about the animals. The receptiveness, you're changing maybe the way the animals are doing. Have you had issues with the animals themselves in what you're doing or how you're dealing with that? I know you're not going to get feedback necessarily, but maybe there are instances that you're obviously, you have a connectivity to other beings that when one is maybe more receptive to change than not.
Yeah. So, I'll say this. A lot of times this sort of work with animals does seem like witchcraft because their healing is, I've heard people use the word miracle. Oh my God, this is a miracle. This is a miracle. This doesn't make sense. For example, I was working with a dog who had been paralyzed for 3 months, freak accident playing at dog park, twitched his neck, and the vet wanted to euthanize him because he hadn't walked in 3 months and lost a lot of muscle mass, but the family couldn't do it because the dog was smiling. He was fine from the neck up. And so within 2 hours, 2 sessions, he was up and running. And it did look like a miracle. And and people are like, how is this possible? You don't ever see this sort of healing with humans. And my answer, or typically you don't. My answer is that animals are not invested in being sick. Okay. And that's really the biggest thing, this is hard for some humans to hear, but humans are much more invested in their illness. And a lot of times they define themselves with it. And that sucks to say, but it's true. And if you've suffered with fibromyalgia or some really painful disease your whole life, it starts to become a part of your identity. Yeah.
I've got an analysis on this, that there are two types of people you run into life. There are peers and there are patients. And peers are those superpower, amazing, thought-leading people like yourself who you're trying to uplift another individual and you'll look out and have an empathetic view to someone else. And patients are those who like to be taken care of and like to always be the center of attention, or that the world revolves around them and that, they should be able to ring a bell and someone will treat them. And when they are ill, these characteristics kind of like cream rising to the top become much more visible and evident to others. What's your thought on that?
Yeah. I mean, it's true. And it's like, it hurts me to say it, but I was working with a scientist, a researcher of science, a scientist researcher of cancer. And we had a very similar conversation. And he was like, there are some people that you will piss off when you cure them of cancer. And and I see it. And a lot of times people ask, like, do you work with humans as well? And I will dabble every once in a while when I feel like I want that punishment brought upon myself. I do work with humans. I've worked in hospitals, but I prefer not to, because we're much more difficult to heal, myself included, hand raised, because we're like, but my mom was mean to me when I was little. And, and we just have a hard time getting through our stuff. Whereas animals don't, if they're like, my back hurts. Oh, okay, here, let's solve that. And they're like, oh, awesome. Cool. I feel good. And then they move on. They're really not invested in being sick, where you don't maybe see remissions and stuff is when the animal is really old and it really is their time to go, but we can set them up to have the most graceful passing possible and as pain-free as possible.
You actually bring up an interesting point that you prefer to deal with the animals than with the people, but obviously recognizing that this is your business and your job and your brand. What have you done to work with yourself to help communicate this specific skill and expertise that you have in helping to pitch your services to humans?
Oh, so much. I mean, I'm constantly working on myself, but I have the highest level of certification you can have with Healing Touch for Animals, which is the school in Colorado. But I've also worked at hospitals and rehab facilities with humans. And I work with cancer researchers kind of a lot, because cancer is always changing. Our information on it is changing and growing and shifting. And so I can't remember the last time I've read a book for pleasure, to be honest, which kind of sucks because I used to be totally addicted to smut. But now my bookshelf is all cancer. It's pretty boring. But yeah, constantly working on myself, like if you want to, I'm not a veterinarian, but veterinarians have really high suicide rates because it's actually a pretty depressing business. They euthanize a lot and animals are really sick, but the animals who come to me, I'm a last resort. Like at one point I was thinking about putting on my business card, last resort. People come to me out of desperation. I am their last resort. They've spent $8,000 at the vet. They don't have the answer, or, the vet was like, I can't help you. Your animal's in stage 4 cancer. They don't qualify for chemo. It's pretty depressing. And I know a lot of people are like, oh my God, your job's so cool. You work with animals. It's like, well, I love my job, but I'm not working with kittens and puppies.
Yeah.
I'm working with really, really sick, injured animals, and it's pretty depressing. So my self-care is through the roof. That's why I'm going Korean massage. That's why. Like I take probably, I'm super into bath culture. I take probably 4 or 5, 1 to 2 hour baths a week that are completely decked out. I submerge myself in deep, 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 deep self-care.
I'm going to jump to a signature question right now. Is this how you get yourself back on the thriving track? This
totally.
path? Yeah.
Yeah. Because I mean, how could I be of any service to anybody? How could I show up into a room where people are crying and, and upset, their beloved best friend is dying? If I was tired and exhausted and not supported, and I have to thrive to be able to help other people. This is also why I train in Krav Maga. I'm doing so much all the time that actually my ex-boyfriend was like, I have never met somebody who gets massages, acupuncture, and chiropractor every single week as much as you do.
And there's a balance here. Hold on. Let's capture this, because you're nailing upon. We always try to decode how people thrive, and that's why I ask that question. And you have something really interesting, which is a lot of this individual self-care. I would put this more on the softer side, but you just mentioned Krav Maga, which is certainly not. For the listeners that aren't familiar, I am familiar. Can you share with the listeners what this is?
Yeah, it's basically Israeli militia street fighting.
Exactly.
I have my taking my clothes off. I'm covered in bruises and scratch marks, and I was body slammed by a 14-year-old girl last weekend. So that's pretty cool.
Thrive Loud listeners are now going, so this started off in taking care of animals, and now we have gone to body slamming by teenagers.
Right? Yeah.
So, and by the way, great balance, and it is an amazing skill sport. And having met you in person, I'm imagining that this is a good self-defense mechanism. That note to self, Lou, don't get too close.
Well, it's actually part of the reason why I started doing it was part of my protection for animals. Like, I really want to do a Sea Shepherd campaign where they're out on ships trying to save whales. And a lot of, you're ramming ships and a lot of the activists do get attacked. And so it is part of my bigger mission to help more animals.
Rachel, you obviously have shared this passion. I want to talk about how you're spreading the word about it. Speaking, podcasting, communicating. Talk to the listeners a little bit about how you're marketing and getting yourself out there.
Yeah, podcasting. I speak on a lot of stages. People love me, Lou, so they want me on their stages.
This is so true, by the way. Who doesn't?
Yeah, so that's how I ended up on the Women Rocking Business stage. I find speaking is the best, but there's not a lot of people who do what I do. So for that, I'm lucky. And I'm also lucky that people love animals. I heard somewhere that if you're in the food business or animal business, your business is going to be golden. So
this is true. You need to eat and everyone loves animals.
Everyone loves animals. So yeah, I do a lot of podcasting. I speak on live stages as a keynote speaker because a lot of my work with preventative healthcare is empowering people with their emotional state of mind, because a lot of our animals are sick because we're in a state of emotional distress. And so a lot of people want me to come and speak, at colleges or to their women, especially if they have, self-empowerment stuff.
Let's do this right now. Let's get the fun admin part out of the way here. Share with the listeners all the places people can learn about you, your business, your service, if they're interested in all the links, social media, all those things. We will provide in the show notes. Always sounds better when it comes from you.
Yeah. I'm on Instagram. I'm on Facebook. I have private face group where people can ask me questions specifically. I'm on Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, and all of those links are on my website, which is rachelaugusta.com. And yeah, I'm pretty much all over the place. So really easy to find. And if you Google my name, you might even find some of my old circus and sideshow pics.
Which is exactly the question I wanted to ask about right now. What is this?
So I used to live in Hollywood. I lived in Hollywood for 15 years as a vaudeville performer and circus sideshow performer. So I tap dance, I play ukulele, I sing songs from the 20s, I tell really bad jokes, and I can hula hoop around my toes. I can light cigarettes off of people's tongues with fire. I've eaten glass, all sorts of stuff.
Rachel Augusta is just the most well-rounded person we've ever seen and had on the show. Rachel, let's dive into some of these fun conversations here. I learned that you have an interesting favorite movie. Can you share with the listeners?
Yeah. And I want to preface this by saying I have such a hard time with the word favorite because everything's my favorite.
Fair enough.
But I love the movie Delicatessen.
Okay. I am not as familiar with this, and maybe our listeners are not. Give us a little bit of a background and why this movie connects with you.
It's really messed up. So it's a French movie. I highly recommend everybody watch it, but it's the director is just phenomenal. His understanding of colors and sound really appeal to me. So he uses them very vibrantly, sound as well throughout the movie. But in this movie, essentially, it's kind of like end of the world. Armageddon's already happened, It's people trying to live in a society where there aren't very many resources. And because there isn't a lot of food, they start eating each other.
Oh, lovely.
but they all feel really bad about it and they pretend like it's not happening, but there's a butcher in town and it's really good. Am I selling it?
You're selling it. I guess it does kind of make sense.
Especially for Halloween.
Well, I keep thinking it makes sense because in reality, you love animals and a lot. I don't know what your dietary things are, but maybe that
I'm vegan.
So there we go. So there could be a component of this. Hey, you're not going to eat the animals. You might as well eat yourself. So I totally get that part. Right?
Right.
Totally fits up.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I love that movie before I became a vegan. I love the cinematography, but there's a scene where this guy sits on on an old bed, with wire springs, and it goes, Rick! And then he notices it, so he bounces again, and it's like, Rick, Rick, and it turns into a whole song of him bouncing on the bed, and I'm like, that's amazing. He just turned a squeaky bed into a musical. That's amazing. So yeah,
I'm trying to get my head around Rachel Augusta, the speaker, the activist, cares about animals, and is fascinated by movies where people are eating each other. It totally is coming together. It's the perfect episode description of what we could possibly put in the show notes here. I've got a couple more questions here. First of all, do you like music? Obviously you do. You like songs breaking out in random movies. But
Yeah, I love music.
What is your jam? What is the song that you're hearing before you hop on stage or that gets you going?
Oh God, it just really depends. It really depends on what I'm doing. If I'm going to go hula hooping, that's a playlist that I'm so embarrassed about. I won't share with anybody else. But my favorite stuff to jam out to during the day, I love the Ramones.
Oh, nice.
Part of my self-care, honestly, is dancing to the Ramones.
I think I can see this. Out of all, I can imagine you practicing Krav Maga with that in the background. How amazing that would be.
Yeah, especially the song "Beat on the Brat."
Oh, see, this is spectacular. Rachel Augusta, we've covered the gamut. First of all, thank you for what you're doing for something that is. Look, I have a dog and I'm a big animal lover as well. And to know that there's somebody that cares and is trying to figure out different ways to help them, this is awesome. And I think it's a kudos to you. So this is my little golfer clap here for you doing an amazing job to the world and keep being as diverse as you are, because I think the world needs more Rachel Augustas out there.
Oh my God. I want to quote that and put it on my website.
You can.
Can I?
We could take the oral version of this and we could say, hey, audio version and put it in there.
Yes.
Thank you. But with all of that, Rachel, thank you so much for spending a little bit of time on Thrive Loud today.
Lou, you're the raddest. You're so cool. I'm so glad we got to meet.
Right back at you. And to all our Thrive Loud listeners out there, thank you for joining us. And until next time, keep thriving onward and upward. And remember, be brief, be bright, be God.
Beat on the brat, beat on the brat, beat on the brat with a baseball bat. Oh yeah, oh yeah, oh ho.
You've been listening to Thrive Loud with Lou Diamond. Check us out and subscribe wherever you listen to your podcasts, or head on over to thriveloud.com. And while you're there, click the Get Connected link to learn more about upcoming shows, special events, and other great promotions coming from Thrive Loud.